So, Douglas, if you said that you know that you can rely on yourself, whatever comes in life, it means like self-trust, right? So when there's self-trust, how can someone cultivate that strong self-trust and not get lost about, oh, someone will save me, or I don't have enough strength to really trust myself that if I do this, and if it won't happen or it won't work, I won't be lost. I won't be so devastated. Is that like, I mean, it's a journey, but how will you?
Well, I think that, you see, as children, we need to trust adults, primarily our parents. And so, yeah, we scrape our knee and we call for our mom, It's someone to soothe us, someone that holds that ability to care and show compassion for our pain and those things that we need. And the more that that's happened in our lifetime, the more that we internalize that ability for ourselves. Okay? And so we become our own parent, And self-soothing is part of trusting that we can handle what it is that comes up. Now, does that mean we should be isolated individuals who don't need anyone? No, I don't think so. I think we need each other. But there's a difference between need and needy. Okay, so if I'm a grown man who still needs someone, sometimes I substitute a wife for a mother, something like that, then that's not bearing the responsibility for myself, okay? So we do need each other. We are human beings who are socially inclined, and it's necessary but bearing the responsibility is to say, well, in the end, no one can do this for me. I'm the one who has to do it.
Well, it also boils down to like the needs of a child, because right now the word autonomy comes up. Like, how much autonomy did your parents give you to build that self-trust? But how much autonomy can they provide you so that you won't be like, okay, I can do this alone? Not so much freedom, still have the guidance and the structure. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah.
How prepared are we, I could say, was I for autonomy? And I think my story is quite interesting because as a kid, I happened to live at a time and in a neighborhood where we'd come home from school and my mother would say, get out, go play in the neighborhood. Okay. And there were no adults, and there was a pack of kids. And we had great games, kickball and bombardment, and every day we're playing like kids. And I think that, without knowing it, that's probably the greatest gift that they gave me. It is because in that play, I discovered who I am, okay? And I discovered who I am in a pack of other kids, How do we play fair, and what do we do when somebody's being... So I think I grew up and gained a sense of that when I was a kid. Now, the other thing is, I told you in the first session that around the age of 18 or 19, I made a fundamental decision that what I was brought up to believe wasn't congruent with my own perception. And it was a pretty radical decision to leave the church because we were taught to obey and comply and to not trust our own ideas, but to follow and somehow I just hit this point where I couldn't do it. So even though I wasn't really prepared for that autonomy, I had taken it. And I fumbled my way through my 20s, not knowing who I was,
I have that. Thank you for sharing. This is so interesting. I'm just realizing that we have kind of the opposite perceptions of what the dependency is here, because I So I mentioned before, I had quite a lot of autonomy as a kid. It didn't feel like agency, but there in fact was a lot of autonomy. And I had complete lack of faith in myself. I even remember, like, when I was around 18, I came to school to find out the results of my exam, one of the finals, which affected a lot in my future, like what kind of university I can get into. And I was shaking and crying, to the point that I actually took my brother that you guys have seen now. He's taller than me, but he's 10 years younger, so he was like 7 at the time or 8. And I clung to him for moral support. Like, I was that devastated. I lacked faith in myself that much, and my teacher looked at me and she was like, you worked in different countries alone at this age. How come you have so little confidence in yourself? And later, a little bit later in life, when I started reflecting on my relationship with religion, so I'm not from a religious family, so I have sort of the opposite situation here. It occurred to me that, there might be some correlation between having faith in God, like, having I'm not sure if it's about the cognitive capacity, but, for the psyche, for the whole psyche, to have a capacity to have faith in something. I lack that capacity. And, I came to a conclusion that it must have affected my capacity to trust in general. Like, I'm from an atheistic family, so I've never thought that there is something. I still struggle with construing the idea that there might be something, like a God. So this is very counterintuitive to me, like on the physiological level, the whole idea feels counterintuitive. And I figure that it might have affected the fact that I have a problem with faith in general, including self-trust. And autonomy didn't help. If anything, I feel like it felt like it was too much and I was doomed
Too much too early.
Yeah. So I'm just curious here, what are your thoughts on these, like, dependencies, interdependencies?
So guidance is the right balance between structure and freedom. Okay, and actually they would kick me out and I would have the freedom, but I come home to the structure. And having a lifestyle based on going to church on Sunday and going to the catechism on Wednesday and praying before the dinner was structure. Okay, regardless of what the beliefs were, my family lived their life based on a set of routines and structural expectations that came from that community, that way of functioning. And I think that's one reason why religion continues to hold up, is because it represents community. It represents a safe kind of lifestyle where people know who each other is, and they have the community that's based on those common ideas. Okay, now we can debate as much as we want about how true they are or whether, but I think there's Alain de Botton wrote a book, Religion for Atheists, and he basically talks about all the benefits that come along with being part of a religious community. So I think, that struggle that you described is one between the structure, the lack of structure. So you had autonomy before you were developmentally ready for that, and that's why you felt overwhelmed at certain times when you're going to be measured or when there's something that would represent some feeling of success or failure. Then so I think, and I think you're right, religion may have been something that might have offered that in your life. I mean, it's only hypothetical that we can imagine that, but I think it does. Religion can serve as a guideline for the way people live their life,
Yeah, and I think like structure and guidance, of course, is really important. And I consider myself lucky enough because, of course, as I mentioned before, I had a great childhood and a lot of freedom, and I had to go back to that feeling of freedom because at one point I was kind of like lacking the guidance or maybe the exchange or maybe the communication with my parents, because I always consider me as like, I was so grateful to be able to spend time in England and having also two parents. My mom's English, so Athens, my dad is from the south of Italy, so it's really traditional, so really black and white. They still love each other, but I grew up with this contrast, also values and opinions. It's always been a dance of contrast that worked really well. But at the beginning, being able to spend time in England when I was younger, having a lot of freedom in making mistakes. I didn't realize it back then because I was younger, but it's true that when I look back, I had parents, especially my mom, who was always able to put me in front of a decision, whether there was pain, whether she would never really maybe how can I say, trying to assist me with the decision. So she gave me a lot of freedom. But when I was maybe, 16, 18, I kind of felt a little bit of lacking guidance because I wanted to have that even dialogue or exchange. Not that it was anything wrong, it was just the way she probably dealt with situation with parents as well. So it was beautiful from her end to give me a lot of freedom, but then in the long run I realized that I found it was a good training, for what was coming, because you find yourself in analyzing, making a lot of mistakes with relationship and not having anyone really to maybe stop you or judge you or just observing. So with time I understood more what happened there and how I built the relationship with my parents and the autonomy and freedom that I had, which I was grateful for because they built, I consider myself like I have a strong mindset, and I think those periods, those choices, those mistakes have a lot of, have contributed to this for sure. But then there's always, when you observe it, there's always that kind of like acknowledgement of kind of feeling a little bit of lack. It's never going to be a perfect balance. We know that. Sometimes you have a lot of guidance, sometimes too much, sometimes you have a lot of structure and you want to escape. So I think I had a good balance, but I realized that what made me stronger and more powerful was also being able to throw myself out there and make a lot of mistakes and just being accountable for my decisions. So I've recognized that with time. I think I was suffering a little bit along the way because I thought, why no one is, jumping in and interfering or giving me advice. And then I realized, okay, I've got this. And that was useful, for the rest of my journey. So
There's many stories. I used to work with teenagers, and there's many stories about those years, the ending of childhood towards the preparation for adulthood. And it's that dance between structure and freedom that can sometimes become very serious conflicts between parents and kids. So the way I think of it is that, let's just say it's 100 pounds, 100, from childhood to adulthood. And the job of the parent is to pass that weight to the child. So in the first year, they get 1 pound or 2 pounds, okay? And over the course of childhood, they've gotten 100 pounds, okay? And the key is two things. Number one, do the parents pass that along? And number two, does the kid accept it? Let's call that responsibility. Do they accept the responsibility that's commensurate with their age, their developmental step? So too much, too early is going to be too hard. Not enough, okay? So I used to have, the kids that came to me were kids who were not doing well in school, who were trying all kinds of things that were getting them in trouble. And instead of the parents letting go and giving them more and more, the parents were freaking out going, oh, I'm not going to let this kid out the door because I don't trust what he's going to do. So he's losing the freedom at a time when he's supposed to be getting the freedom, you see? And it becomes a big war, and then finally it's like, okay, you're 18, you're out of here, you're on your own, you're free, you do what you want. And of course he's not prepared for that either. So that's why teenage and adolescent can be quite difficult. And yes, you actually wanted more from your mother, but she was saying, no, I mean, you're growing up now. This is the time to make decisions.
Also because she left when she was 17, young, and again, Anglo-Saxon culture, different emotions, the way I'm dramatic. I want it all, you know, and my mom is like frozen. We have a beautiful relationship, but I learned how to maybe translate those her way, you know, understanding more. And so the transition sometimes it's not smooth, but I think she did great in giving me a lot of freedom with strong values. You know, I had the structure, I knew what her background was, and that was always a sense. When you're 18, you can go, you can do whatever, and I was ready. I was like, yeah, I was like, oh, maybe I'll wait a little bit longer.
Every 18-year-old thinks they're ready. Yeah.
And that's some sort of expectation you grew up with. Oh, 18, I'm ready for, you know, discover the world. But yeah, the more structure you have, the more stability you build, the better tools you have to go out there and discover the world. So you need to let it go, obviously. So
I think guidance, when I look at, last week we named the 7 needs, and I think guidance, there's a lot of room to talk more about what that is. It is that handing off of responsibility in the right sort of balance. And, you know, it's not something that usually happens in a perfect way. It either becomes, you know, too little, or the kid doesn't accept it, or, you know, there's all this kind of way in which we're not fully prepared for what it means to then have full autonomy as an adult. And that's why the 20s is often we stumble through going, okay, now, you know. And we eventually start to get our balance, and we start to realize, okay, this is, it's up to me now. You know, I'm the one who...
And the transition can be smooth, you know, when you have good guidance and good structure, that transition is smooth. But when it's not, then that's when you struggle to understand, okay, I need to listen to how I feel. You don't really have tools. So I found a lot of, like, you know, family members, even when we were younger, struggling a lot more to understand, okay, I had no guidance, no structure, very maybe messy sort of journey when they were younger. So when they found themselves in charge and accountable for the decision, they were like, okay, how do I do this? So of course it's more difficult, it's not as easy to really put in practice, you know, what you've learned, because maybe you haven't got a really good structure behind. But I have always found along the way that the key is also experimenting. You know, you'll never have the perfect answer. No. So you grow up thinking, okay, you need to know what you like and what you want to do. Just choose one, and that's it. I remember that, you know, I grew up with this concept. You're going to choose one and do that for the rest of your life. I was like, wow, sounds fun. Of course, I didn't stick to the plan, but that for my parents, that went down to, you know, values and principles. You need to work hard and find your way, which it's good to be ambitious and have dreams and study, but then I will change as I go. So yeah, I mean, it's you know, we are continuing to evolve. So it's a challenge that is out there for us, no matter what.
Let's pick up on that idea, because I see this a lot.